G'day and welcome to another episode of Ian Smissen's Photography. Well, this one's a little bit different. This is the first in a series of shoots from our holiday in the UK. My wife and I spent the whole of the month of September there. We went to a whole range of different locations, starting in London and then driving south to Brighton, and then all the way along the coast to Cornwall, and then up the west coast to Wales, and then back to London. So this is the first in the series from Brighton. We shot the Brighton Pier and the West Pier at sunset. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the series. I'll just show you what I'm shooting here. I come in and show you really close up here. You can see here I've got the line of the shore running diagonally from this bottom left corner, and the tide's coming in, so I have to keep shifting up the beach. But I want a little bit of white water. We'll just wait for a wave. Just like that, to come out through here and point up towards the pier. And I've got the main entry point to the pier, the pavilion part of it, sitting at that top right third, and the pier itself on that top third. So we'll take a shot like that to start with, and then see what else we can come up with to try and improve the shot. So I really like the subtle texture in the white water and this diagonal line pointing up to the start of the pier, and then the line of the pier out into this really bright sun setting behind the pier. In addition to that, and I didn't spot this until after I'd taken the shot, I love this subtle line, this little curvy line here that breaks up this big triangular block of orange pebbles and adds to that sense of travelling from the foreground into this point at the beginning of the pier. The second shot that I wanted to take, though, was a shot including the whole pier, which obviously would have had to have been a panorama. A panorama for this point would have de-emphasised the pier because it would just be way too small in comparison with the rest of the shot. So I moved up closer to the pier, up to about here, and reshot the panorama. Alright, well, I quite like that one. But now the next shot I'm going to try and get the whole pier in, which is just way too much for this lens. And if I go to a 12mm lens, which I have in the bag, that'll be okay, but there'll just be way too much foreground and way too much sky for me. So I'm going to flip the camera around into vertical and do about an 8-shot panorama and see how that one goes. I'm going to have to slow the shutter speed down quite considerably because just the slight variations in movement in the water, if I'm taking a fast shutter speed, it makes it very hard to blend those together. With a slow shutter speed, it flattens it out, blurs it a little more, and gives me more opportunity to blend those together back in Lightroom and Photoshop. So I'll give that a go and show you what we come up with. Okay, I've moved further up the beach, closer to the pier. Still taking panoramas, still with it in vertical, still everything on manual. Check out my video on taking panoramas if you want more details on how to do it. But in this case, I'm now taking a 5-second exposure. I'm overexposing by about 2/3 of a stop because it's quite dark now. But also, I've put a 4-stop graduated neutral density filter on the front. So I've now got Pentax K-1 camera, 24-70 Pentax lens, Nisi filter system with a polarizer on. The polarizer I'm not using to polarize the sea to get rid of glare. I want the glare on there because there's a really nice reflection of the golden light underneath the pier. But I'm using it to just take another 1.5 to 2 stops off the exposure. I've got a 3-stop neutral density filter in and a 4-stop graduated neutral density filter to even up the exposure between the sky and the sea.
That one didn't quite work because I still wanted to emphasise more of the pier. So I moved even closer to the pier and I moved just up the shore a little bit away from the sea to give me more of this sandy and shingle beach and to expose the front of that pavilion with the really nice neon lights on it.
So the sky is clearing out to the west and I'm now up on the pier, and as you can see from the camera here, I'm facing straight down the shoreline, lining up these 2 rock walls with the waves just rolling up over the shore in between and the bright light in the background silhouetting the west pier.
Well, I just couldn't get the vertical to work, but just as I was about to give up and I'd flipped over to try a horizontal, a cloud just came halfway across the sun and gave this really eerie orangey light, and I quite like this crop panorama.
So I've walked up the beach about a mile to the equally iconic Old West Pier. At least it's as equally iconic for landscape photographers. If I spin around here and look over to the west, you can see that it's looking a little bit promising. Directly behind the old pier though, it's looking a bit dark. But if the sun comes out, you never know, it might pink up a little bit. You've got to be here to have a go. So we'll see what happens.